Regen Ag for me is probably, the only way we can farm, really. Being realistic, sustainable is no longer an option. So essentially our only option is to manage land and improve its health. But by doing that, we will improve every aspect of life and production from it.
We get asked for a definition of regen all the time. My answer to that is I know what regen isn't. And I think the regenerative word, if you think of the word, every day, without fail, I hope, we get up and we try and regenerate. So we're not mining the soil. We're always trying to, whatever we do, we're trying to improve things rather than degenerate them. So whatever context you're farming in, that can be related. So for example, if we have to worm our cattle for, say, we don't do it with ivermectin, which then, ivermectin is a really powerful, dangerous wormer, which then kills all the life in the soil. So we do it a far more long-winded way, because ivermectin is quite easy to use, but we do it a much more long-winded way, but that is so we don't kill all our worms and bugs in the soil. So it's not always the easy option.
It's all about regenerating your natural fertility, or enhancing, protecting your natural fertility of your soils. Because if you lose that, you've lost everything. And what are they trying to tell us? We've got 60 years left or something of soil nutrition in the top 6 inches of our soil in this country, if it doesn't get washed away or blown away.
Looking at inputs, it can help you reduce your input costs. So if you've not got to spend as much on fertiliser through a regenerative farming system, that's going to save you money there. But it's not quite as clean cut as that, because it will have other implications perhaps on your yields for the crops you're growing as well. I think it's really business by business. I don't think there's a sort of clear cut one answer for all, but it can work very well for some businesses. Some regenerative farming businesses are doing very well. A lot of companies like to see it as well. If you're working with a retailer, quite often they'll give you payments. There's new schemes coming in where retailers will work with you and pay you for doing regenerative farming practices on farm as well, because it looks good for them if the farmers are doing so. So there are lots of benefits to it, but it works well for some, but not everyone likes it.
So regenerative farming for me means farming as close to nature as possible, and all that encompasses. That means sort of biodiversity for animal health. So how can we use trees and grasses to benefit livestock? What does that mean in terms of parasite control, for example, or infectious diseases? What does general diversity in a farming system bring to animal health? Thinking about it from a regenerative perspective is looking at the root cause of disease. So instead of what I would say I do in my more commercial role or conventional role, is using sticking plasters. So rather than trying to understand what the root cause is and figure out what that is. So for example, when we're talking about worming treatments in livestock, we would often just use a worming product if there is a problem with worms, rather than looking at why are they getting worms in the first place. And some of those preventative measures that we can use would be including things like a diversity in the sward. So things like chicory and plantain and sandfoin, for example, have anti-parasitic effects naturally, so natural, what we call anthelmintic effects. Things like trees and having access to browse have tannins in there. So the tannins in there can actually reduce parasites' ability to reproduce in the gut. So actually there's all of these things in nature that exist.
I think the main opportunities for, in this case for grazing operations, is that by adopting regenerative practices, we can significantly shorten housing periods, so reduce wintering costs quite significantly. But as well as that, we can significantly reduce issues from dry weather. We can eliminate drought. So the way that, for example, extreme weather events, heavy rains, wet winters, normally play out with sort of flooding, standing water, inundation, for example, all of that will be addressed through improvements in soil structure, soil health, eliminating compaction, allowing water from rain essentially to percolate into the soil rather than just either sitting at the surface or running off.